Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be tackling quantum mechanics,
Oh, fun.
but with a twist.
Yeah.
We're not just looking at, all of the sort of typical interpretations.
Right.
We're asking if quantum mechanics itself
Oh,
is already like an interpretation,
Interesting.
like a deeper reality.
I like it.
So we're going to be looking at some excerpts from a text called Quantum Mechanics and Interpretation of cspace.txt.
Okay.
Just to sort of unpack this idea.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting approach.
Yeah.
Usually, people try to make sense of quantum mechanics through all the different interpretations,
Right.
like Copenhagen interpretation or the many worlds interpretation.
Yeah.
But this is, like you said, flipping it on its head.
Yeah. And it even goes so far as to call those standard interpretations unnecessary, unwanted,
Okay.
and even misleading.
That's a pretty bold claim.
It is a bold claim.
Yeah.
One of the things that really stood out to me, though, was this concept of changing space that the source proposes as like the foundation for reality.
Yeah, that is really interesting.
Yeah.
Changing space is described as this dynamic three-dimensional space
Okay.
that's constantly moving and morphing and changing.
So not just an empty backdrop,
No, not at all.
but like something active
Exactly.
that's actually like changing.
Yeah, the source suggests that everything that we perceive as fundamental particles, energy, even space-time itself,
Right.
all arises from the different configurations of this changing space.
Okay.
So you can kind of imagine it like constantly shifting ocean,
Okay.
with waves and currents forming and dissolving, giving rise to the illusion of separate objects.
Okay, so instead of thinking of the universe as like built out of these tiny little separate particles,
Right.
we should think of it more as like this constantly changing interconnected field.
Yeah, precisely.
Okay.
And the source argues that our human brains,
Yeah.
which evolved to deal with a world of seemingly solid objects, they kind of struggle to grasp this more fluid reality, this interconnected reality.
Yeah.
And that's where this need for interpretation comes in.
Okay.
We're trying to impose our familiar categories like particles and waves, observer and observed,
Right.
onto a reality that doesn't necessarily fit into those neat little boxes.
So our struggle to understand quantum mechanics might stem from
Potentially.
our own limited human perspective.
Yeah.
Not from some like inherent weirdness of the quantum world.
That's what the source is proposing.
Interesting.
For example, the Copenhagen interpretation,
Right.
which a lot of physicists use,
Yeah.
emphasizes the role of the observer
Right.
in defining these quantum phenomena.
Yeah.
But maybe that's not some fundamental truth about reality.
Okay.
Maybe it's just a reflection of how our changing space brains
Right.
try to make sense of a universe that's far more interconnected and dynamic than we can even imagine.
This reminds me of something I've always kind of wondered about, which is the phrase, shut up and calculate, which some physicists use to sort of dismiss,
Yeah.
deeper philosophical questions about quantum mechanics.
Right.
Does the source address that at all?
It does.
Okay.
The source suggests that this very pragmatic approach might actually be a sign that we're dealing with human-constructed models and interpretations,
Okay.
not with the ultimate truth about reality.
Yeah, okay.
So our models, like quantum mechanics,
Yeah.
can be incredibly useful tools for predicting and interacting with the world,
Yeah.
even if they don't fully capture the underlying nature of changing space.
So like maps,
Yeah,
they're helpful for navigating the terrain, but they're not necessarily identical to the terrain.
exactly. A great analogy.
Yeah.
And this raises a really profound question.
Okay.
If reality is fundamentally changing space,
Yeah.
is it even possible to step outside our human-constructed perspectives
Right.
and directly grasp it?
Now that's what I call a deep dive.
Yeah.
I'm hooked. Where
Yeah.
do we go from here?
Well, the source doesn't claim to have all the answers.
Right.
It acknowledges that this is a huge challenge.
Yeah.
It's almost like trying to describe the ocean
Okay.
to someone who's only ever seen like a photograph of a wave,
I see.
just a still image.
Yeah. That makes
So we're trying to grasp something
Yeah.
that's incredibly dynamic and interconnected,
Right.
using tools and language that were designed for like a static world.
Right. A compartmentalized world.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the source really emphasizes the need for more research
Yeah.
into the very nature of changing space,
Yeah.
What is it made of? How does this constant changing actually happen?
Right.
What are its properties? These are all open questions.
Yeah, it's exciting, though.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like we're on the edge of this whole new frontier
It is.
of scientific exploration.
Yeah.
This changing space concept, if it's true, could revolutionize our understanding of everything.
For sure.
From, the smallest particles to the entire universe.
Absolutely. Think about cosmology, for instance.
Okay.
We currently explain the universe's evolution through things like the Big Bang,
Right.
the expansion of spacetime.
Right.
But what if those are just emergent properties
Okay.
of changing space?
Interesting.
What if the universe's evolution is not about, the movement of matter and energy through a fixed spacetime,
Right.
but about the unfolding of different patterns within this fundamental changing space?
That's a wild thought.
Yeah.
It would be like looking at the universe not as a clockwork mechanism.
Yeah.
But as like a constantly evolving, self-organizing system.
Precisely. And the source hints at some even more profound implications.
Okay.
Suggests that we ourselves as humans
Right.
are not these separate entities
Okay.
observing this changing space from the outside,
Right.
but rather we are complex configurations within it,
Okay.
experiencing ourselves as individual entities.
So instead of being like detached observers of the quantum world, we're actually participants in this like cosmic dance of changing space.
That's the idea.
That's wild.
Yeah, it really blurs the lines between observer and observed subject and object.
Totally. All right.
It suggests a level of interconnectedness that goes far beyond what we typically imagine.
But if this changing space concept is so revolutionary,
Yeah,
why haven't more scientists embraced it?
that's a good question.
Is there any experimental evidence?
Uh,
Or is it just purely theoretical at this point?
The source admits it's still early days for changing space.
Okay.
It calls for more research to really explore its properties,
Right.
test its predictions.
Okay.
And you're right, it does challenge a lot of deeply ingrained assumptions in physics.
Right.
So it might take some time for it to gain wider acceptance,
Yeah.
even if it has the potential to resolve some longstanding mysteries.
Like, can you give me an example of a problem that changing space might be able to help solve?
Sure. Take dark matter, for instance. It's this mysterious substance that we can't directly observe,
Right.
but it seems to make up a huge portion of the universe's mass.
Right. We infer its existence through its gravitational effects.
Exactly.
But we don't know what it is.
Exactly. And changing space might offer a completely new perspective on this problem.
Okay.
What if, instead of being some unknown type of particle,
Right.
dark matter is simply a manifestation of the dynamics of changing space itself? What if the gravitational effects that we attribute to dark matter are actually arising from the way changing space interacts with the visible matter that we can observe?
Okay. That's interesting.
A different way of looking at it.
Yeah, but how would we even test that?
Well, the source suggests that one way to test the changing space concept
Okay.
would be to look for subtle deviations from the predictions of standard physics,
Okay.
particularly in extreme environments like black holes or the early universe.
Okay.
If changing space is real, it should leave its fingerprints on the behavior of matter and energy in these extreme conditions.
So we need to like push the boundaries of our observations to see if we can catch changing space in action.
We need to see how it behaves.
Okay.
And the source also mentions that advancements in fields like quantum computing and quantum information theory could potentially provide new tools for probing the nature of changing space.
This all sounds very complex, but also incredibly fascinating.
It is.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around like what changing space actually is.
Right.
The source describes it as being elastic and three-dimensional.
Yeah.
But can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Of course, imagine like a rubber sheet
Okay.
that can stretch and compress and warp in 3 dimensions.
Okay.
That's a very simplified analogy for changing space.
Okay.
It's not just an empty void.
Right.
It has a dynamic structure that can change and evolve over time, giving rise to the phenomena that we observe in the universe.
Okay, that helps. So it's like the universe is this giant, ever-shifting cosmic canvas.
I like that.
And changing space is the fabric of that canvas.
Yeah, a very poetic way to put it.
Yeah, and the source is suggesting that this constant motion and change of changing space is what gives rise to everything we observe.
Yes.
From the smallest particles to the largest structures.
Exactly.
So instead of like distinct objects moving through a fixed space, we have these patterns and configurations within changing space that our brains interpret as separate things.
Precisely. And this has profound implications for our understanding of what constitutes a thing in the first place.
Right.
We're so used to thinking of objects as being fundamentally separate and distinct.
Right.
But in the framework of changing space, that separation might be an illusion.
Okay.
A product of our limited perspective.
This is a lot to take in.
It is.
We've talked about the implications for cosmology and our understanding of matter.
Yeah.
But what about the very act of observation? If we're all just configurations of changing space, how does that change how we view the observer and the observed?
That's where things get really interesting. The source argues that within changing space, that traditional separation between observer and observed breaks down. Yeah. It's not that there isn't an observer or an observed,
right,
but rather they're both part of the same interconnected system.
So it's not like we're standing outside the universe, peering in, but we're like waves within the ocean of changing space.
Exactly.
Both influencing and being influenced by all the waves around us.
It's a much more participatory view of reality.
Yeah.
Where observation becomes a kind of dynamic interaction.
Okay.
A dance between different aspects of changing space.
That's a really beautiful way to put it.
Thank you. Good.
I'm still grappling with all the implications of changing space.
I understand.
But one thing that really stands out to me is this idea that our current scientific language might be inadequate. For describing this new reality, the source mentions how some mathematical concepts that we use, like infinities and irrational numbers, might be artifacts of our models, not reflections of the true nature of changing space.
It's a humbling thought, isn't it?
It is.
We often assume that our most advanced mathematics provides a clear window into the nature of reality.
Right.
But what if the window itself is distorting our view?
So to our listener, we leave you with a challenge.
Yes.
If reality is fundamentally this changing space, how does that change your perspective? What new questions does it raise for you? How might it inspire you to look at the world and your place in it in a new light?
I like that.
We encourage you to explore these ideas further.
Absolutely.
To delve into the source material we discussed and see where your own curiosity leads you.
Yeah.
Maybe by embracing this new way of seeing, we can begin to unlock the secrets of this changing space we call reality.
Thanks for listening, everyone.